Let me share something profound with you today that could completely transform how you approach life and success. We're going to talk about a principle that's so fundamental yet so often overlooked, seeing for yourself first. You know what's fascinating? Most people spend their entire lives looking out when they should be looking in. They're so busy trying to change the world that they forget to change themselves. They're so focused on seeing others that they never truly see themselves. Let me tell you something I learned early in my career that changed everything for me. Before you can lead others, you must lead yourself. Before you can help others, you must help yourself. Before you can see others clearly, you must see yourself clearly. Now, isn't that interesting? We live in a world where everyone wants to fix everyone else, but nobody wants to fix themselves first. Everyone wants to change the world, but few are willing to change themselves first. Let me share with you what I call the mirror principle. Before you can reflect light onto others, you must first become the light. Before you can show others the way, you must first find your own way. Before you can teach others to see, you must first learn to see yourself. You see, most people are walking around with blindfolds on when it comes to self-awareness. They can see everyone else's faults, everyone else's mistakes, everyone else's areas for improvement. But when it comes to seeing themselves, they're completely blind. Think about this. How can you possibly help others if you can't help yourself? How can you guide others if you're lost yourself? How can you show others the way if you don't know where you're going? Let me tell you about two types of people I've observed over the years. The first type is always looking out, always pointing fingers, always finding fault with others. They're like lighthouse keepers who spend all their time studying other ships but never check if their own light is working. The second type understands something profound. They understand that the first person they need to work on is themselves. They understand that the first person they need to lead is themselves. They understand that the first person they need to see clearly is themselves. Here's something fascinating about seeing yourself first. It's the hardest kind of seeing there is. You know why? Because it requires absolute honesty. It requires you to look at yourself without excuses, without justifications, without rationalizations. Let me share with you what I call the 3 levels of seeing. The first level is surface seeing, seeing what everyone else can see. The second level is deep seeing, seeing what others might miss. But the third level, the most important level, is self-seeing, seeing yourself as you truly are. Now, here's what's interesting about these levels. Most people never get past the first level. They're stuck at surface seeing. They see the obvious, they see the external, they see what's right in front of them. But they never develop the ability to see deeply, and they certainly never develop the courage to see themselves. Think about it. How many people do you know who can truly look at themselves objectively? How many people do you know who can honestly assess their own strengths and weaknesses? How many people do you know who can see themselves as they really are, not as they wish they were? Let me tell you about something I call the self-seeing paradox. The more clearly you can see yourself, the more clearly you can see others. The more honest you are with yourself, the more genuine you can be with others. The more you understand yourself, the more you can understand others. But here's what's fascinating. Most people have this backwards. They think they need to understand others first. They think they need to see others first. They think they need to help others first. Let me share with you what I call the 4 questions of self-seeing. The first question is, what am I becoming? Not what do I want to become, not what should I become, but what am I actually becoming right now through my daily choices and actions. The second question is, what am I contributing? Not what do I want to contribute, not what could I contribute, but what am I actually contributing right now through my work and my relationships. The third question is, what am I learning? Not what do I want to learn, not what should I learn, but what am I actually learning right now through my experiences and challenges. The fourth question is, what am I avoiding? Not what do others think I'm avoiding, not what I pretend I'm not avoiding, but what am I actually avoiding right now through my fears and excuses. Now, isn't that interesting? These questions force you to see yourself as you really are, not as you wish you were. They force you to confront the reality of your life, not the illusion you've created. Let me tell you about something else I've observed about seeing yourself first. It's the foundation of all authentic growth. You can't grow what you can't see. You can't improve what you can't acknowledge. You can't change what you can't recognize. Think about trying to navigate in the dark. It doesn't matter how fast you can run if you can't see where you're going. It doesn't matter how strong you are if you can't see what you're trying to move. It doesn't matter how skilled you are if you can't see what you're working on. The same principle applies to personal growth. If you can't see yourself clearly, all your efforts at improvement will be misdirected. If you can't see yourself honestly, all your attempts at change will be superficial. Let me share with you what I call the self-seeing sequence. First, you must see yourself as you are. Not as you wish you were, not as others think you are, but as you truly are right now. Second, you must accept what you see. Not justify it, not excuse it, not deny it, but accept it. This doesn't mean you have to like what you see, but you must accept it as your current reality. Third, you must understand what you see. Why are you the way you are? What experiences have shaped you? What beliefs are driving your behaviors? Fourth, you must decide what to do with what you see. What needs to change? What needs to strengthen? What needs to go completely? Now, isn't that fascinating? Most people try to skip straight to the fourth step. They want to change without seeing, accept, or understand. That's like trying to fix a car without looking under the hood. Let me tell you about something I call the self-seeing principle. The quality of your life will never exceed the quality of your self-awareness. The level of your success will never exceed the level of your self-understanding. The depth of your impact will never exceed the depth of your self-knowledge. Think about it. How can you possibly create lasting change in your life if you can't see yourself clearly? How can you possibly achieve meaningful success if you don't understand your own patterns and behaviors? How can you possibly make a significant impact if you don't know your own strengths and weaknesses? Here's another fascinating thing about seeing yourself first. It's the key to authentic leadership. You can't lead others effectively until you can lead yourself effectively. You can't guide others clearly until you can see yourself clearly. Let me share with you what I call the 3 mirrors of self-seeing. The first mirror is your results. Your results don't lie. They show you exactly where you are, regardless of where you think you should be. The second mirror is your relationships. The way people respond to you, interact with you, and relate to you reflects aspects of yourself that you might not be able to see directly. The third mirror is your reactions. How you respond to challenges, setbacks, and opportunities reveals your true character, not your imagined character. Now, here's what's interesting about these mirrors. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid them. They don't want to look at their results because they might not like what they see. They don't want to examine their relationships because they might have to change. They don't want to analyze their reactions because they might have to grow. Let me tell you about something I call the self-seeing challenge. For the next 30 days, spend at least 15 minutes each day looking in these 3 mirrors. Look at your results honestly. Examine your relationships objectively. Analyze your reactions truthfully. You know what's fascinating? Most people won't take this challenge. You know why? Because seeing yourself first is uncomfortable. It's easier to look out than to look in. It's easier to judge others than to judge yourself. But here's the truth. All meaningful growth starts with seeing yourself first. All lasting change begins with self-awareness. All significant improvement starts with self-understanding. Let me share with you what I call the 5 laws of self-seeing. The first law is you can only change what you can see. If you can't see it in yourself, you can't change it in yourself. The second law is what you see in others is often a reflection of yourself. The things that bother you most in others are often the things you need to work on in yourself. The third law is your level of self-awareness determines your level of effectiveness. The clearer you can see yourself, the more effective you can be in all areas of life. The fourth law is growth follows awareness. Once you see something in yourself, you can't unsee it. That awareness creates the possibility for change. The fifth law is self-seeing is a continuous process. It's not something you do once and you're done. It's something you must do consistently, constantly, continuously. Think about it. Every major breakthrough in your life probably came after a moment of clear self-seeing. Every significant change probably started with a moment of honest self-awareness. Every meaningful transformation probably began with a moment of true self-understanding. Let me tell you about something else I've observed about seeing yourself first. It's the foundation of all authentic relationships. You can't be genuine with others until you're genuine with yourself. You can't be honest with others until you're honest with yourself. Here's another fascinating aspect of seeing yourself first. It eliminates the need for comparison. When you truly see yourself, you understand that your only real competition is yourself. Your only real measure is your own growth. Let me share with you what I call the self-seeing success sequence. First, see yourself clearly. Second, accept yourself completely. Third, challenge yourself consistently. Fourth, improve yourself continuously. Now, isn't that interesting? Most people try to improve themselves without first seeing themselves clearly or accepting themselves completely. That's like trying to build a house without first laying a foundation. Think about it. Every successful person I've ever studied had one thing in common. They developed the ability to see themselves clearly. They might not have started with this ability, but they developed it. They might not have enjoyed this process, but they embraced it. Let me tell you about something I call the self-seeing breakthrough. It's that moment when you finally see yourself as you truly are, not as you wish you were. It's that moment when you finally face your true strengths and weaknesses, not your imagined ones. This breakthrough doesn't feel good at first. In fact, it often feels terrible, but it's the beginning of all real growth, all authentic change, all meaningful improvement. You see, seeing yourself first isn't about beating yourself up. It's not about finding fault. It's about finding truth. It's about finding clarity. It's about finding the starting point for all real growth. Remember, you can't build what you can't see. You can't improve what you can't acknowledge. You can't change what you can't recognize. See yourself first. Everything else follows from there. That's the message. That's the principle. That's the truth that can transform your life if you're willing to see it, if you're ready to accept it, if you're prepared to act on it. The choice is yours. The time is now. Will you see yourself first? Let me share something else with you about this principle of seeing yourself first. You know what's fascinating? The deeper you go into self-seeing, the more layers you discover. It's like peeling an onion. There's always another layer beneath the current one. Here's what I call the 7 depths of self-seeing. The first depth is seeing your actions, what you actually do, not what you intend to do. The second depth is seeing your habits, your automatic behaviors and patterns. The third depth is seeing your emotions, your genuine feelings, not your pretended ones. The fourth depth is seeing your thoughts, your real thinking patterns, not your idealized ones. The fifth depth is seeing your beliefs, your true convictions, not your proclaimed ones. The sixth depth is seeing your values, what you actually value, not what you say you value. And the seventh depth, that's seeing your potential, not just who you are, but who you could become. Now, isn't that interesting? Most people never get past the first or second depth. They see their actions, maybe their habits, but they never dive deeper. Let me tell you about something I learned from my mentor that changed everything. He said, Jim, most people are walking around in a fog of self-deception. They think they see themselves clearly, but they're only seeing what they want to see. Think about that for a moment. How many times have you told yourself a story about who you are, what you're capable of, what's holding you back, only to discover later that story wasn't entirely true? Here's another fascinating thing about seeing yourself first. It's the key to authentic confidence. Not the fake confidence that comes from ignoring your weaknesses, but the real confidence that comes from knowing yourself completely, strengths and weaknesses alike. Let me share with you what I call the self-seeing confidence formula. True confidence comes from seeing yourself clearly, accepting yourself fully, challenging yourself regularly, and improving yourself consistently. You see, most people try to build confidence by hiding from their weaknesses, by pretending they're something they're not. But real confidence comes from seeing yourself exactly as you are and being okay with what you see while still being committed to improvement. Think about it. How can you be truly confident if you're always trying to hide parts of yourself? How can you be genuinely self-assured if you're afraid to look at yourself honestly? Let me tell you about something else I've noticed about seeing yourself first. It's the foundation of all authentic decision-making. When you see yourself clearly, you make decisions based on who you really are, not who you think you should be. Here's what I call the self-seeing decision matrix. Before making any significant decision, ask yourself these questions. Is this decision aligned with who I really am? Is it consistent with what I truly value? Does it support where I honestly want to go? Now, isn't that interesting? Most people make decisions based on what others expect, what society demands, what they think they should do. But when you see yourself first, you make decisions based on your authentic self. Let me share with you another principle I've discovered about seeing yourself first. It's the key to genuine happiness. Not the temporary happiness that comes from external achievements, but the lasting happiness that comes from being aligned with your true self. Think about it. How can you be truly happy if you don't know who you really are? How can you be genuinely fulfilled if you're living someone else's version of your life? Here's what I call the self-seen happiness principle. Your level of happiness is directly proportional to the alignment between who you truly are and how you actually live. But here's what's fascinating. Most people never experience this alignment because they never take the time to see themselves clearly. They're too busy trying to be what others want them to be, too focused on meeting external expectations. Let me tell you about something I call the self-seeing revolution. It's that moment when you finally decide to stop living in denial, stop hiding from yourself, stop pretending to be something you're not. This revolution doesn't happen overnight. It's not a single event, it's a process. It's a commitment to seeing yourself more clearly each day, to being more honest with yourself each moment, to becoming more authentic with each choice. Think about this every time you choose to see yourself clearly rather than hide from yourself. You're building strength. Every time you choose to face your truth rather than maintain your illusions, you're building character. Let me share with you what I call the 4 freedoms of self-seeing. The first freedom is the freedom from pretense. You no longer have to pretend to be something you're not. The second freedom is the freedom from comparison. You no longer have to measure yourself against others. The third freedom is the freedom from external validation. You no longer need others to confirm your worth. And the fourth freedom is the freedom from fear of exposure. You no longer have to worry about others discovering who you really are because you already know and accept yourself. Now, isn't that powerful? Most people spend their entire lives imprisoned by these very things: pretense, comparison, need for validation, and fear of exposure. But when you commit to seeing yourself first, you free yourself from all of them. Remember, seeing yourself first isn't just about self-improvement, it's about self-liberation. It's not just about becoming better, it's about becoming free. It's not just about growing, it's about liberating yourself from the prison of self-deception. That's the ultimate message. That's the final truth. That's the lasting transformation that comes from seeing yourself first. The choice is yours. The time is now. Will you have the courage to truly see yourself first?